One of the very first question which people ask me is how much money exactly do we need to start a business? And the answer for that question would surprise you, because many of the new investors or the first time entrepreneurs, they do not calculate the operating expenses into their financial budget. They only look for their capital expenses, and that's the place where you make your first mistake in a business. So in order to understand what exactly is the budget required for your business, we need to dive deep into the different head accounts which we need to understand before we open up first business. One of the biggest misconception in starting your own business is that startup capital is the only amount which you need, which covers your lease, your equipment, your starting and launching of your business with the ready infrastructure. While that's not the case always, because there are 5 different categories of different investments and expenses which you need to consider when you are launching your first business. So the first category in terms of your startup capital or investment budget requirement is your actual startup capital. Naturally, as the name suggests, it is the capital which is required to start your own business, which includes your equipment, your infrastructure, your initial lease requirements, your licensing, your furniture, your fixtures, and all of the primary cost of launching the business. The second category, which most of the times people misunderstand or miscalculate, is your working capital. Working capital is something which you really need to have in your operating account of a business, which should cover your lease, the regular monthly lease payments, your payroll, your insurances, your utilities, and your marketing cost and a marketing budget for your business. The third very important investment category is your marketing and advertisement budget, which includes your product marketing, your branding, your advertisements, your grand opening event, your Google, Facebook ads campaigns, your product videography, all of those expenses which will be utilized to bring your product or service out there in the market. Category number 4, which you always need to consider, is your emergency funds, emergency capital. Yes, when you are opening your business, you plan well, you make a good forecast and everything, but you definitely need to have an emergency backup, because you know what, the things might not go as planned or as you were expecting. Maybe the sales gets late, or maybe your next customer is not ready to buy your service or product, or you still need to pay your bills, you still need to pay your employees to keep the things rolling, and your operating capital is not sufficient enough to cover after a certain period of time. For example, if you keep it for a 3 months operating expenses, then you need to have at least a few months of emergency budget, which can cover a lot of emergency or unexpected, unplanned costs for your business. And the last category which you need to consider, and that might not be the amount which you need to have before starting a business, but the moment your business starts expanding and flourishing, you need to start planning for that capital, and that is called a growth capital. So the growth capital means when the business starts flourishing, you start breaking even, you start making money, and then you start planning for the expansion of your business. You might need to buy additional tools and equipment. You need to expand your infrastructure, you need to expand your branches, your locations, or you need to hire more employees to serve more customers. So those extra expenses would be considered as your growth capital. So those all are the expenses and the capitals which you need to consider. I'm not saying that you need to have all of those expenses sitting in your bank account before you actually start and plan for your business launch, but whenever you are planning to launch your business or start your business or invest in a business, you need to keep all of these different expenses and different capitals into the consideration, because sooner or later you would be requiring those amounts and those funds. So at least you need to have an access to the funds available sufficiently to cover all of those head accounts for the financial model. So make sure before you actually invest in a business, build a complete capital plan so that you don't get surprises and you don't fail in the business because of the lack of financial planning. Thank you.